The story always started the same way. In the deep woods, when the mist rolls in and the wind stops blowing, don't speak his name. Don't look into the dark for too long. And whatever you do, never follow the knocking. It was one of those childhood warnings meant to keep kids from wandering into the forest alone. I heard it 100 times, but it was only ever just a story. What more could there be to it? The forest, even without these superstitions, will always be a dangerous place. Bears, wolves, mountain lions. Encountering any one of these is practically a death sentence. I was back at the old family cabin, clearing it out after my father passed. It had been practically abandoned for years, overgrown, rotting, really just bones of what it used to be. But my memories of it has always been one of the best. The summers we spent here were the times I sometimes wish I could go back to. My brothers and I goofing around getting hurt, and my mother getting mad at us for being so, and then there's my father and grandfather, who would often be out in the wilderness hunting for game, fishing out in the lake, or chopping firewood. Your stereotypical outdoorsman stuff. Whenever they would call for us, we ran with excitement to huddle around and listen to them. They taught us things like how to tie a knot, how to prep your fishing line, or how to spot tracks in the ground. My brothers and I turned out to be quite the outdoorsmen ourselves by the time we were teenagers. But then, out of the blue, we just stopped going. It wasn't your we just grew out of those times sort of ordeal. Grandfather explicitly warned us to not go anywhere near the forest. I asked my parents about it a number of times, but my father would always get mad at me for bringing up the topic, and my mother was just indifferent about it while showing a sad expression. My brothers and I could never really understand why, but we felt it best not to pry into the matter any more than we should. When I was preparing to join my brothers in college, we received the news that Grandpa had sadly passed away. I was distraught at the news, but I was immediately perplexed by what I heard from my parents after. We couldn't visit Grandpa, not until they are able to bury him at the local cemetery closer to our home. All I could ask my parents was why. I had not seen Grandpa for years at this point, and neither did my brothers, so all we wanted was to have one last proper goodbye. The conversation was put to rest when the local police came to our home and picked up my father. Once again, I was perplexed by the sight. Apparently, the local sheriff personally knew Grandpa and my father, and was an old hunting buddy of theirs. What was strange about the whole thing was that when they came to our house to pick up my father and go to the old cabin in the woods, they were armed. Not just your standard patrol gear or anything. Each of them had a rifle, a sidearm, and carried a good amount of ammunition. They left in a hurry, so I wasn't able to ask. They came back the next morning, seemingly without any issues. Dad just came home tired from a really long night, is what it seemed. It wouldn't be until a few years later when I would learn what really happened that night. Time flew by fast, and there wasn't much that happened over the past 6 years. I finished my degree, got into a reasonable paying job, and moved into an apartment in the big city. It was out of the blue when I got a call from my mother about my dad's illness. The doctors didn't really know what it was and requested to have my father checked at a hospital with better facilities. They feared it was cancer. The symptoms were similar, but they couldn't detect any abnormal growths. Dad was apparently very stubborn about it, refusing to get diagnosed any further. My brothers and we were almost appalled by it. Dad was never really the type to be unreasonable about taking the most logical step to something. Hell, when we were kids, he would be the first one to drive us towards the clinic when he felt that our fever was going on for way too long than it should. We discussed it among ourselves at first, and we eventually chose to go back home as soon as we could before deciding what to do next. I was the last one to be able to go back home. Despite my best efforts, the clerical organization of the company that I worked for was not the best, and it took a while for my leave of absence request to get approved. But I took the first bus I could back to my hometown. My brothers had already left the day before my arrival. Mom said that urgent matters came up, so they had to return to their respective homes. Frankly, I'm the only bachelor left among the three of us. The oldest already has his own family, and the middle child is living with his girlfriend's family. I had hoped to be able to catch up with them since we were barely able to talk these days, but the purpose of my visit comes first. It was fortunate that my father's condition didn't progress any further before I could see him. He was visibly weak from whatever disease he caught. He looked pale, emaciated, and his expressions were gaunt. This man was practically at the pinnacle of a family man's physique. He's no Mr. Olympia by any means, but as an outdoorsman your entire life, it has its visual benefits, and he definitely benefited from it. But right now, there wasn't even a shadow of that man. I pleaded with him to see reason and to take up the doctor's advice. But with a firm hand, he assured me that whatever he had could not be cured by conventional means. He was cursed, he said. The conversation we had after that statement gave closure to all of the questions from years ago that were left unanswered. He started with the old story that Grandpa used to tell us. The story that never had a name, but we always saw it as a sort of metaphor to keep us safe from the dangers of the forest. I'm sorry. I had hoped to spare you and your brothers from the cruel fate bestowed upon our family. On the night of your grandfather's death, we didn't just go there to get your grandfather's body from the cabin. We were hunting something down. We don't know when exactly this curse took root in our family line. From what your grandfather has told me, this has been going on for at least 200 years. It's a cycle that starts once the current patriarch of the family dies. Something appears in that forest. We don't speak its name. Not because we don't want to, but because the more people who know its name, the stronger it gets. When it appears, it will go on a hunt. It will take one human life each night for 10 days. Afterwards, it will disappear again. It may or may not appear again for the next year. There is no pattern to it. We just have to be ready at the cabin on the first night of each year afterwards. It can be killed by conventional means, but it can only be done so by a son of our family. Taking it down on the first day is the most ideal, since it won't go through with the remaining days after. You may think it's unfair for us to have to go through this ordeal. I thought so too at first when your grandfather first explained it to me. But if we don't kill it, the people that it hunts down first will be the people closest to us. It's what took your grandmother all those years ago. Over the years, our ancestors have slowly been able to uncover quirks to this curse that we're able to use to our advantage. You remember the story that me and Grandpa would always tell you when you were kids, right? I nodded. Before it hunts, it will go through that exact order of actions. For each step you fail, it will grow stronger. On the night of your grandfather's passing, the deputy sheriff failed to uphold 2 of those 3 steps, and it took all we had to take it down. The young deputy that came with us that night never made it out of there alive. The hunt will start as soon as you hear the final knock. It's a bit tricky, but if you stay far enough from it that the final knock is just a faint thump in the distance, that final condition can still be fulfilled. It won't attack you while you're inside the cabin, but the longer you stay in there, you run the risk of it targeting one of the people closest to you instead. It doesn't like it when you try to abuse the rules. The killing blow must always come from a son of the family. Otherwise, it will simply return the next night. There is a way to prevent it from returning until the death of the next patriarch, and it's by killing it in 2 specific ways: stabbing its heart or decapitating its head. Few of us have ever been able to do it successfully. On the night your grandfather died, I tried to do so with the help of the sheriff and his deputy. But because it got stronger, just being able to take it down was a miracle. I've been hunting it alone ever since. I gradually got better, but as I got older, I became sloppy. On my last hunt, I was finally able to decapitate it, but it went for one last attack before going down, and it got me. The venom it inflicts is different. It doesn't just eat away at your body, it corrodes your very soul. It kills slowly, but death is basically inevitable. On the night of my death, it will return. Your grandfather and I did everything we could so that this ends with us, but it wasn't enough. I went out and drove around town by myself, thinking about what my father had just revealed to me. I am apparently the first to hear Dad's explanation of the curse among my brothers, but he planned to tell them as soon as they returned. I knew what my father was planning. Taking that thing down would be far easier with the 3 of us working together, especially given the fact that any one of us can deal the killing blow. It was early in the afternoon when I got a call from my mother. My father. He had just passed away. I still wasn't sure of what had just been revealed to me yet, but I didn't want to risk it. I went straight to the local hunting supply and gun store and bought everything I needed. I couldn't wait for my brothers, since that thing will appear tonight. After getting everything I could possibly need, I drove home to let my mother know and to see my father. My mother bore a sad expression, but she knew this had to be done. The sun was setting when I had arrived at the edge of the forest. The cabin was about a 30-minute walk away, so I spared no time and proceeded to unload my gear and started walking. By the time I arrived at the cabin, it was already dark. Any time now was what I thought to myself. I cleared out the debris that had built up over the years. It seems my father did his best to maintain it as much as he could. After all, this cabin was the only form of solace that we had. I had finished laying out everything I needed and just sat down. And then I waited for this nightmare to start.